Hey, what is going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about this. I'm just going to give you all a heads up here. This is going to be a little more of a, I guess, video where I just kind of talk to you all and kind of rant and ramble or whatever it might be. For my rants these days, I really don't get all like uppity and like scream and like throw stuff or like I don't do like the exaggerated gamer thing really. So for anybody who's expecting those kind of rants, I don't know. I just don't have the energy in me to do it at this point now. Like 10 years ago, sure, absolutely, but these days, no. It's more just disappointment, which some people could say is going to be worse for the receiving end when it comes to that, as opposed to just getting angry about something, you know? So disappointment at best, I suppose. Either way, what I'm trying to say here is this is just going to be more of a laid-back video where I'm kind of just going to be talking like this. So if you kind of want to run it in the background, feel free to. And this is going to be a little bit late here, but it is in regards to the Xbox 360 and the marketplace or the digital storefront shutting down. Now, this was a really big topic because there was a lot of people who had a lot of love and still have a lot of love for the Xbox 360, the memories there, and the digital storefront end up staying online for almost 19 years. You gotta realize, I was actually talking about this on my most recent podcast, Mario's Minute, with Slot One Gamer, or Liam, and we actually came to a realization there that you gotta realize when the storefront and the console ended up releasing, it was before Windows Vista released. So it was still, you were still able to use a digital storefront like as of a couple weeks ago that was released during the Windows XP era. Aside from like all of the issues and contingencies with keeping that type of infrastructure going and taking security and payment processing into account as well too, that's pretty impressive, and I can also understand why a company like Microsoft probably wanted to just shut it down as quickly as possible, although they learned from the original Xbox where as opposed to pulling the plug too early, they gave us, well, 19 years, almost 19 years of service for the digital storefront and the actual gaming service itself, the original, well, I guess 360 Xbox Live that you can play online on a 360 is still up and running and working, so that's nice as well too. However, talking about this here because GameStop ended up coming into the foray where this is over on Twitter, and they ended up quote tweeting Culture Crave where they said the Xbox 360 store has officially shut down, end of an era, and this is on July 29th, 2024. Now, whoever was running the GameStop Twitter account ended up quote tweeting this and said, "Bet y'all wish you bought physical copies now." And they end up replying saying, "Buy physical," and of course they linked to the GameStop.com website where you can check out Xbox 360 titles that are on there. And from what I understand, people didn't take to this all too kindly and kind of just started getting their replies in and their dunks in and all that. And I did as well too, to the point where I also wanted to kind of make a video here talking about it, because there was a lot more to it than 240 characters, because I'm not paying for Twitter Premium. I don't know, I tried it for a month, wasn't for me really. But yeah, even though I had 2 tweets on there, I still had more to say about it, is what I'm saying on here. And we'll talk about it here, but I do want to give some time and thank you to this video's sponsor, PCBWay. Now, if you are unfamiliar with the channel, I like to do a lot of modding, a lot of tinkering with video games, video game consoles, all that fun stuff, and some hard mods. I really like being able to pick up a soldering iron and do some cool stuff with it to these video game systems to unlock them and get some more usability out of them, because that's always a pretty cool thing. And being able to see what some hardware related projects the open source community puts out there is incredible, and it's really cool when someone like me who doesn't really understand the ways of doing that all the way from the beginning can take a project and work with a company such as PCBWay to get custom 3D printing, printed circuit boards, 3D flex cables, and so much more done. And even if it's to the point where you do not want to assemble some of these projects yourself, they even have pre-assembled options as well too. So as long as you give them a bill of materials, they can build everything for you. I myself was ordering from them before I was sponsored with them years before. Lily's been happy with them as well too. And some of the things that I've gotten done up have been one of these printed circuit boards right here to make a PlayStation 1 memory card, as well as a 3D print for it, and even some really cool stuff, something like this, which in my opinion does make RGH3 a lot easier and cleaner, at least when you do the install. And I'm showing this here because this is a pretty wacky printed circuit board right here. Like, you can just see how thin it is, how odd it is, and the curve right there. So this has worked incredibly well. I just did an install with one of these and they work fantastically. So big thank you to the creator, Element, but also PCBWay for getting these fabricated. If you are interested in PCBWay or any of their services, check out the link down below in the description of this video. And if you are a new customer, you'll get $5 credit towards your first order order, so that could hopefully help out any kind of prototyping projects you want to work on. And I feel like it's probably going to be a little bit of a better value than power-up rewards or whatever GameStop has these days. Either way, thank you very much to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. Lily thanks you as well too, even if she's sleeping. Oh, she's awake a little bit. And we'll just go ahead and get back to the topic at hand here, which is, well, the entire internet dunking on GameStop over the 360 storefront closing. So the reason why I even jumped into this in the first place is because I had a pretty clear memory of one of the last times I went to GameStop when they were trying to, kind of get in on this. And I understand it's a PR person who's just doing PR things, but the story that I had ended up being from last year. You see, I ended up visiting my family, and my younger brothers had a task they wanted to challenge me with because they wanted to accomplish something with it. They had a old modified Xbox 360. They had Minecraft on there. They had a bunch of Minecraft worlds that they absolutely loved. I'm also going to say, I'm sorry in advance if I mess up some of the terminology here between maps, worlds, realms, and all that. I'm not a Minecraft player. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. However, they had some old maps or some old worlds that they wanted to play on a modern setup. They were playing them offline on this old modified 360, and they wanted to get them to play on a PC, so that way they could play multiplayer together on PC with these old maps that are quite literally from their childhood. So since they had a modified system, I ended up bringing one of my retail systems over, something like this, but the thing is, when I was packing everything, my own fault here, I forgot to bring a power supply. They have a fat system, I had a slim system, so I ended up going into town, and I went to the local GameStop, and I asked, hey, do you have, like, one of these, like a Xbox 360 power supply? Or even if they had a fat one with an adapter, I would have been okay with it. And keep in mind, this was 2023, the console came out in 2005, sure, I get that. However, they did end up looking at me, they kind of looked around, and they looked at me like I was a little bit odd, which, hey, I acknowledge I am. I'm certainly not going to be the most normal person there. But they also said, well, no, we don't, Xbox 360, no, the system's too old. And the reason why I remember that visit so fondly, like it's fresh in my head, and I kind of related it to this tweet here, is because of kind of the double speak that GameStop has been doing for a long time. See, when they ended up sending this out, I essentially said there, don't pose yourselves as the saviors of physical media or physical accessibility when you all have done so much to harm it. And some people might be wondering what I mean by harming it here. You see, years and years ago, I was also tinkering around with the Xbox 360. Before I was modding it, I was trying to get some broken ones, repair them and all that. Plenty of bad repair methods out there. Don't overheat your system. Don't replace the X clamps with bolts and screws and washers and all that. Just don't do any of that. But hey, it was like 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012-ish, kind of around there. People were doing that, including GameStop. And I'm just thinking of the countless Xbox 360 refurbished units they had, not the used one. The refurbished ones were the ones that went down to the repair center in Texas. They got ripped apart, even if they were perfectly working. They end up having cheap thermal paste applied to them. They had a fan mod done on them to make the fan run consistently at a higher speed to keep it cooler. And they end up replacing the internals that held the CPU and the GPU to the motherboard. They replaced those X-clamps with screws and washers, which is certainly not a fix, and it's actually been demonstrated and noted down so many times after the fact, after research has been done, that that actually damages the system. Even if the system is working fine, it's going to damage the system, so that wasn't great. I also think of the many times where there were people who reported that GameStop would not take trade-ins, they would throw away old stuff. So then that's where the rise of GameStop dumpster divers, especially on YouTube, was a big thing. So what was GameStop's reply to that? Well, they end up just destroying the stuff that they were sending to their dumpster. I mean, quite literally. There were consoles that they were bashing in, there were controllers they were cutting the cords for, there was countless cartridges, I'm sure, but CDs, not so much CDs at this point, but DVD media, Blu-ray media that was scuffed, that was scratched, that was cut up with scissors to make it non-repairable at all. And this is the company that is also now saying, bet y'all wish you bought physical copies now. A company that has done so much to damage not only hardware, but also software in that process. And for some people who might be thinking, okay, dude, that was your problem, all right? First of all, you forgot the power supply. Hey, I get it, all right? Secondly, it was 2023. Who is playing that old Xbox 360 in 2023? There's reasons for it. It's a fantastic system. That's why so many people are going back to them, rediscovering them, or even checking them out for the first time. But the other thing people might be wondering is, well, why would you go to a GameStop for a Xbox 360 power supply of all things? One, because some GameStops still do have that older content there. Yes, it is dwindling, but you'll find some GameStops that do have 7th generation games. They might have some accessories. They might have the systems as well too. But on top of that, it's kind of this double speak as well, where for years now at this point, GameStop has been trying to do some kind of retro gaming initiative and get back into retro gaming and saying, hey, retro is cool again. Retro is awesome again. What's old is new again. Bring in your retro games to trade them in, to sell them to us. We can even sell retro games at some of these stores. So for anybody who's saying, well, a 360 is too old, I'll say, well, there's GameStops that not only accept trade-ins for older stuff than the Xbox 360, but they sell PS1, they sell PS2 games, they sell, I've seen some GameCube games as well too. So are they retro or are they not? And that's more of a GameStop question right there. What are y'all trying to do? The other thing too is that you gotta realize that this is a physical issue with GameStop, which I've never understood. It's a company that they're going to be selling physical items and consoles and such, and their stores have always been small. And I do not understand that. I've never understood that. So, unfortunately, it's kind of reasonable at times to think that, yeah, they're not going to have certain games in stock or certain consoles because they probably don't have a stack of them because they simply don't have the storage space, the accessibility for them. So that's just that's a design thing. I'm not an engineer from that by any means, like working on buildings, but I've never understood that part of it. But what I truly don't understand is when you have this limited retail space, and for the last few years, I think it was when GameStop ended up buying out ThinkGeek, or it was something like that. Now you go to the stores, and I swear 40 to 60% of the store is not video games. It's merchandise, it's backpacks, it's plushies, it's Funko Pops, it's toys, it's t-shirts, it's stuff like that. And it's kind of like the gaming version of what happened with Hot Topic, where like Hot Topic, like in the mall, used to be like all like spooky and eerie and had kind of like everything. And it was this place where if you were into like certain metal and certain bands and all that, and like no other stores in town had their music, Hot Topic probably had it. And now if you go, it's like completely like bright and sanitized, and they might have one album in stock, maybe two. When I've talked to some employees there, they said that they have they only carry like big releases that they know people are going to come there for, but they don't have like catalogs of like vinyl and CD anymore. This kind of feels like the gaming version of that, because the thing is too, a lot of times their physical stuff I see, it's dusty. It doesn't sell. And I'm talking about the merch. I'm not talking about the video games. But it's dusty. It doesn't sell. And then you see a lot of it is on sale or on clearance, and you have to wonder why. I actually thought of this today as well, too. I was remembering there was a local video game shop that I used to shop at, and they've closed long ago, but this certainly didn't help. At first, when they opened up, they were centered around video games and video game consoles, and it was console specific. They didn't do the custom PC thing. They did have PC games to some extent, but a pretty small section, sure. However, it was a really big storefront. They seemed to be doing a good job with what they were doing, right? And then a few years into their venture, they ended up absorbing, which community was it? It was the tabletop and like board game, card game community. You see, there was another store that used to house, and I say this lovingly, they housed all like the nerds who were into board games, card games, tabletop games, and they closed. So this game store ended up absorbing them. The problem is, video game stores aren't really meant for you to hang out in. They're more for you to go there, peruse, buy, sell, trade, get your stuff, talk to people a little bit, and then get out. It's not meant for you to just hang out there. So what this store did is much like GameStop, where they kind of just took half the store and turned it into merch, and the other half they turned into video games. And by the way, their video game sections are kind of sparse these days as well too, from the multiple stores I've been to in multiple different states. That's a whole other thing though. What happened with this original game store, like the local one I was talking about, is they end up taking a game shop, turned about half of it, maybe even 2/3 of it, into card game, board game, tabletop gaming, mostly tabletop, and I'm talking about like Warhammer and things like that. And then the rest of it just kind of got pushed to the side. Like quite literally was the back of the store as well too. So it just got pushed to the back for all the video game stuff. And you know what ended up happening? It didn't do so well after that. You see, I feel like the employees at this store were more classically trained in video games and probably had love. I know at least one of them did have some love for tabletop games and board games like this, but the rest of them, I feel like, kind of just tolerated it and weren't as knowledgeable about it. They started having to stock other things such as snacks and all that as well too, because people were going in there gaming for 4, 5, 6, 7 hours at a time. And then the biggest thing I feel like is that they end up losing customers like me, because what would happen is I would go there and I respectfully just didn't have an interest in any of the tabletop stuff. I was interested in the video games, and they just didn't focus on the video games as much anymore. It even got to the point, I just thought this was a bad business practice, but it got to the point that unless it was like a brand new hot title that was going to sell, they would only do trade. So if it was like a brand new game, yeah, you could get cash for it, but if it was like, actually some of them here, like if it was like some older like original Xbox games like this, they wouldn't give you cash, they would just give you trade. So then you look at the shelves and it's like, well, it's the same kind of crappy games that I saw here last month or 3 months ago. Because the thing is, nobody else is, wanting to trade for anything either, because the good stuff's been kind of picked clean, and there's just stuff that's not really that interesting there, and there's less of an incentive, so people like me said no thank you, they took their games, they went elsewhere. So they end up losing an audience such as me, and I guess it kind of gets to that point. I've seen it in real time there. The store has closed down, but when it gets to a point where you open up for a very specific audience and reason and purpose, and then you end up completely messing with that audience to kind of do a half take, so to speak, on a second audience. Like, you absorb a second audience and you're not doing super well with that. Like, at what point, what are you doing? I've never run into anybody who's like excited to get merch or excited to get t-shirts, or that's their destination. Like, GameStop is going to be that. And clearly I don't think the metrics would really reflect that either. So what I'm saying here is GameStop kind of just lost their identity, and it's nothing new. It happened a while ago, and maybe I'm reading too far into this tweet, I don't know, but it's just something where, hey, I very much enjoy, I love the Xbox 360. I've spent a lot of time messing around with it, playing games on it, modifying it, repairing, doing all that stuff. And it's just, it's a slight slap in the face when you see GameStop is kind of try to pose themselves as like the savior of the Xbox 360 and physical media, when it's like, y'all have done so much damage to to these consoles, to physical media, to all of this. Y'all have done so much damage. And I sometimes think you all are trying to do better, but it's kind of one of those things. It's like, hey, when somebody keeps lying to you, they keep lying to you. They say they're going to do one thing, they do another thing, and they keep flip-flopping and all that. You can't really trust something like that. Because, again, what makes this even worse, which this is something to instill in people as well, too, companies like this are not your friends. Just put that clear. A company is not going to be your friend. They're not your friend. They're not your family. It's a corporation. That's it. But corporations also make a whole lot of mistakes. My overall thing on here, do I want GameStop to go away? I actually don't. I want them to stay around because there's a lot of people where this is their game shop that they know of. This is the only game shop they have access to. And with the dwindling and closure of so many mom and pop and so many local video game shops all over the world, it'd be really depressing to see GameStop completely going away. Because, yeah, even though they have a lot of bad business practices, at the same time, that would kind of be the death of the video game shop, the death of the local video game store, which I don't want to see. But I do want to see them do better. I will say, though, at this point, there's been people in the past, even I myself, people have said, hey, if you're buying used from GameStop, you're contributing because that's where their high profit margins are. But if you go in there, you only buy brand new games from them, you don't sell it or do any of that other stuff, you don't buy used games, then that's fine. I'm even going to go as far as to say, like, if some people might be thinking, okay, dude, you don't like GameStop, don't shop there. I agree with you. Even at this point, don't get a new console from there. Don't get a new game from there. Buy them elsewhere. If they're gonna do stuff that isn't great like this, if they still don't really understand what policies are going to do, what they're going to pursue and all that, and if they're just not doing a great job, then just don't give them your business. That's what you do with companies like this. I think the last time I really bought something from GameStop was it had to be over a year ago. I think I ended up buying Metroid Prime Remastered brand new on Switch because GameStop was the only place that had it in stock. But I've even noticed the last few months when I start looking around for a brand new game that I want a physical copy of, even if I see that GameStop is the only place that has it, I hold off. I don't buy it from there, and I wait for another retailer to stock it because GameStop's just good. GameStop overall has just done so much stuff that's not great that I just don't want to support that until they can prove that they've gotten better. And will they get to that point? I don't know. But that's my overall consensus on this here. If you don't like what GameStop is doing, if you don't appreciate what they're doing, if you think this is kind of some double speak and they don't really mean what they're doing here, they're kind of just trying to sweep things under the rug, just don't shop from them anymore. Anyways, that's about it for this video here. This is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, a like would absolutely be appreciated. If you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well, too.